One of the things I find most valuable about this social income concept is that it measures reality. That is, it's an income, but it's actually measuring reality. The reality is that you have what is a formal income, but then you have support which is unmeasured by friends giving you anything in a community to bail you out. So there's a whole lot of work going on how to measure reality, how to measure progress. So this can be a very valuable contribution to that. And I would like to call it not just social income, but measuring reality. Because another aspect of it is, suppose this woman has got this kind of supporting system in a community. So she's got social income. By the fate of, or the income, the kind of growth policies we have, she has to shift out of that community, maybe migrate to a city. All that social support goes off. So she's left with just what she might earn. So by looking at social income and how that's generated by community support, we're also adding to what is called the sociology of economics, or the economics of sociology. That is how when you shift people, it's not just that they get better income, but they lose that community thing. So that's very interesting, and I really congratulate Guy and others for doing that. But the other aspect that I wanted to just flag was that you mentioned that the income is kept by SEWA members, whereas non-SEWA members are not able to. This is again another important fact, and it should really be generalized into household survey, because very difficult to do anything on intra-household difference in income, earnings, assets. You know that. You can't even find out what the income is because it's household income. You can't find out about assets because it might be owned by a household or a person. But to be able to say that her savings could stay with her because of this particular survey really gives us the first entry point into looking at intra-household management of household income or in household economy. So that's an important contribution. I'm just flagging those aspects which really show the technical value of this study, which is difficult to capture. And of course, the disjunction between growth and reality comes out sharply, but perhaps we would make it sharper. And when the Gujarat Chief Minister comes and says, I'm the shining star of India, here is Gujarat, which is described in this survey, which shows how difficult it has been for women from what we call the poor communities to survive. And they would not survive without that neighborhood support. And so that's another, the disjunction is actually part of the growth paradigm that we are using, and that also comes out in the book. And I congratulate SEWA for explicitly saying that, because very often people duck these days. They don't want to criticize the government openly, saying your growth path is an inequality generating path. But that comes true in the book. I also want to congratulate what I saw as an amalgam. I mean, you have the SEWA Academy helping people to build up self-confidence. Palu Ben, who is telling us how organized voice has helped her. Then you have these young sisters from here. So without the amalgam of different skills and institutions, I don't think really SEWA could have come out with this kind of strong organization and power. These were some of the ones, and of course I love the fact that you are not talking of security but insecurity. I think if more people talked of social insecurity, it would help us to understand how insecure are the lives of the poor. So dear friends, here you have a feast, and I hope that Saida ji will distribute this book to all her colleagues and distribute it widely to the advisors who are equally instrumental in what happens, and to the member secretary, so that they are educated about Gujarat and about measures. I really think the measures should be used by the Planning Commission, and about the crisis that women are facing in this very disjunct economic growth path that we are taking. I really hope you will do that, because you have the power to do that. Now may I invite some comments and questions. We still have 15 minutes, and if a couple of people put up their hands, then we could go around, and then I would hope that the panelists or SEWA members, or you could answer each other also. So sir, you are the first. Could you just give me your name and where you come from in terms of what's your experience?
My name is K. Gopal. I retired from Punjab University, Chandigarh, as a sociologist. So whatever we learnt about SEWA is quite instructive, and one can learn quite a lot. I have one or two questions. One, I was quite thrilled to know about the condition of the low caste people in Gujarat. It reminds me of Kathleen Guff's study in Tamil Nadu, where you see the scheduled castes were treated like that. But one difference, that OBCs were not treated similarly as scheduled caste. OBCs, they could enter the houses of the Brahmins, whereas scheduled caste could not enter. So which means that even today in Gujarat rural areas, our conditions are very, very bad, very ominous. And so this is quite revealing. So it is in this context that I wanted to put a question. What difference has SEWA made in terms of social inclusion? You have talked about financial inclusion. So what difference SEWA has made in terms of social inclusion? The second question which I would like to know, that since it is in Gujarat society that SEWA is located, so how many SEWAs we need to turn Gujarat the way that social inclusion really takes place, and therefore to what extent you see what you are doing experiment, it is replicable? That is my second.
Very good questions. Thank you so much, sir.
P.C. Vishwanathan. I am a freelance consulting editor. Earlier, I had been working as a management consultant. My question is addressed to Sapna Desai. You have said that the women in Gujarat have a profound interest in working for financial sector. Probably that should be a dominant factor contributing to the substantial increase in the state's GDP growth. In the context of self-help group and microfinance, how do you describe the functions of these SEWA women?
My name is Kaveri Gill, and I was a hard-headed economist. I don't know where I am now. I just had a question. There's a lot of literature on using social collateral as a means of repayment in sort of microfinance. So the sense that, because you know each other, and especially women sort of succumb to this pressure, you repay your loans faster, So if you could talk a little bit about that, because I'd just be interested in knowing, to what extent could one scale up, especially if there are Dalit communities, or, are sort of these financial instruments embedded within sub-communities? And if they are or if they are not, how amenable are they to being sort of scaled up, or on a larger scale, where would that inflow of money come from? Just I'm very interested.
First, Dr. Gopal's question about social inclusion. Actually, what Jignaben presented was the field experiences, and I think we were also quite shocked and surprised at the extent of caste discrimination. As I told you, most of SEWA's members are either OBC, SC, ST or minorities. So the whole issue of social cohesion and social inclusion, it's not only social inclusion, it's also a question of social cohesion, because different caste people also find it difficult, even if you are not only upper caste, lower caste, but within OBCs or within SC. So I think that has been, coming from the Gandhian tradition, that has been one of our major attempts, or one of our major issues, is how to bring together people across castes and across religions. And if you see all the institutions that SEWA has created, starting from the union to the bank to any cooperative, it is always an attempt to bring people together on the basis of work, or on the basis of finance, or on basis other than the basis of caste, so that the caste differences go away. But the truth of the matter is, as we all know, is that in fact castes are becoming stronger, the caste differences are becoming stronger, not weaker. So we are all working within a society, as are the religious differences. The second question about the replicability issue, actually the study was in Gujarat, but now SEWA is in actually 9 states. And we find that SEWA, the idea of SEWA is picking up, or has picked up, or women themselves take to it very fast. And what Anne mentioned was she had gone to Madhya Pradesh, and we started the SEWA in Madhya Pradesh 25 years ago. I myself had gone, and today there are almost as many members in Madhya Pradesh, 5 lakhs, as there are in Gujarat. So I think, it's not just a Gujarat issue, it's an India issue. The other 2 questions are on women and finance. And yes, I think women contribute a lot to the state's GDP, but it's not measured. And also somehow we were also surprised at the results that SEWA members, that the highest thing that they like is savings and credit and finance. We thought the highest thing they liked was other things like health or livelihoods, but they prefer cash somehow. I think, the whole issue of microfinance or financial inclusion, for women it's not only money, it's money as well as it gives you a much wider social, what I was saying earlier, access to different social institutions. And this whole issue of scaling up, I don't want to go into here, I just mention 1 or 2 things, which is that what has happened with microfinance is an unfortunate thing. It has scaled up, but it has scaled up what we believe in the wrong way, which is that microfinance institutions have become just money lenders with many negative connotations, except the interest rates may be a little lower than other money lenders. We see microfinance as only one in a method, one in a integrated approach in which it's development of the woman herself, not development of a microfinance institution. So we can talk about that, but I think just going to scale is not the answer. You do need to scale up, but you need to scale up in a more integrated, woman-centered, person-centered approach.
I'm Vibha Puri. I'm Secretary Education, Government of India. And earlier I have worked, we've had the opportunity of working together, SEWA and I was in Uttarakhand. I think the point about social income is extremely well made, and this whole business of creating social capital, we are, I think, in governments also struggling to find answers to what was mentioned about microfinance. And this experience in my state of setting up and trying to work a social venture capital company, which is still to sort of come into its own, but an experiment very well worth trying, and which SEWA has very prominently contributed to. But one thing I'd like to request, as part of this exercise and part of what I am doing right now, and part of what you are saying is the way forward in terms of skill development, I think the problem with reaching out for inclusion of women also is a problem of not recognizing skills that exist. So the documentation, the benchmarking, and the evaluation of skills as they exist, both in economic terms as well as in the social context. And then we can begin to give value to them even in the skill mission. We're looking to Renana Ben for our skill mission panel also. Wanted very much to join in the panel, but I think you have a lot many more commitments. But I think in the skill sector, we have a lot to learn from what SEWA has done. Probably you need to do a little more documentation. Thank you.
As the Director of Mission Convergence in Government of Delhi, and one thing which I would like to know from the SEWA experience is, when you talked about giving like 2 major things, besides financial inclusion, besides social capital, my take was identity and also, organized fora. Now, in these 2 things, in Gujarat, in your experience, were there, in the transition phase, building up, teething problems of opposition by vested interest who are thwarted by people coming into organized fora, especially the poor, which lends them a better voice. So were there problems of vested interest opposing it, and if so, how was it countered?
It seems to me that health insurance is one conceptual issue, is whether you are trying to insure for things that happen very frequently with small amounts of money and happen to a lot of people, okay? Or you are trying to insure against major catastrophes which happen to only a few people, okay? But then when they happen, they are really big, okay? And I don't think consumers and people's voices are heard in which one should be emphasized. Do you have any sense from the women you have worked with that which one would be a bigger problem?
Actually, this is sort of a repeat on the financial inclusion, but looking at it from a different point of view, I think SEWA banks know their clients, and therefore they have a way of, the clients have a way of getting this benefit from the banks. Now, if we want to emulate this from the formal banking system, and actually what the RBI I think now is thinking of, the inclusive financial inclusion agenda is huge in the RBI's table. Can we think of this as a model for other formal banking system to understand your client, which is, impossible if you really think from the formal banking system. But we need to think, is there a possibility? Can banking agents come on board? I'm just putting up a question, so because a huge amount of knowledge and system and process exists with SEWA, which might be followed in the formal banking system.
Why don't you do the insurance question first, and number 7, the vested interest, I'll do a bit in.
On our experience at Vimo SEWA, in terms of when we were creating the product, certainly in asking women what their needs were, the first issue that came up, frankly, is that illness is so frequent. Whether it's not really a question of which risks are more frequent, but the reality is that illness is so frequent. So what we find, if you just look at claims, for example, that the #1 claim is actually waterborne disease. So catastrophic expenditure is difficult to define with the poor, because you find that even the smallest illness, something that may cost 1,400 rupees on average, is actually cause for catastrophe in the home on a monthly basis. But now with the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, and what we're seeing on the ground, particularly in Bihar, is that women are going to use that not just for small illnesses, but because the cover is much larger in the government scheme for other larger operations and illnesses. So I think we're in actually a very good moment right now with health insurance, where we can look to the RSPY for large illness cover, and then for smaller illness cover, schemes like SEWA's that are smaller cover, and also looking to a strengthened public health system.
I think that question on the vested interest that Rashmiji raised is actually the crux of the matter, which is that there are everything there is a vested interest, whether you go from the domestic, from the household to the contractor to the municipal corporation. I was just asking her, did you face any vested interest? She's telling me about the corporation and the police, especially those policemen who lost their earnings and those corporation officials who lost their earnings. So I think really at every stage you face the vested interest. And it takes many forms. Sometimes it just takes a form of violence, sometimes it takes the form of intimidation, sometimes it takes the form of rumors. We've often had this key, if you go to the meeting, they will sell you off, or they'll convert you, or, So I think what one has to be prepared for is that whatever step one takes, you're hitting against something. So how do you deal with it? And that's a very general answer. Do you want to, Namrata?
Well, Renavan has said that, but to say it in very simple terms, when women come for our training sessions, there are so many times when the men in the house, it starts from the family itself, either the brother or the husband, will come with that person and wants to see what is going to happen there. So the question of identity, when she has to stand in front of everybody and say, Naam Kam Gam, the first thing she is fearing who's listening, and just to say my own name, it becomes so difficult. But when she sees other people in the same scenario, some change happens. So there is vested interest even